When the ambulance arrived to our small little apartment in California, my parents were in a state of panic. They were confused, scared, frustrated, angry, and they didn't know what to tell him. All I knew was that I was burning up and I was shaking uncontrollably. They found out later I had had a seizure. They didn't know what caused it, and they didn't know what kind of things could be caused by it, but roughly 2 years later I was diagnosed with auditory neuropathy. In this speech, I'll inform you more about auditory neuropathy as well as different treatment options available. Some of you may have never heard of this disorder. This speech will provide you with a more basic understanding of auditory neuropathy and different treatments out there. On the other hand, some of you might already be experts. This speech will give you a more personal look at how it has affected me in my everyday life. I was diagnosed with auditory neuropathy when I was 4 years old, and I've lived with it for the last 13 years. In addition, I've had to do countless hours of research to help me better understand this disorder. In this speech, we'll take a look at what it is, different treatments, as well as how it has affected me in my everyday life. Dr. Ann Budowin defines auditory neuropathy as a rare hearing disorder characterized by normal outer hair cell function and abnormal or absent auditory brainstem response. To better understand what this means, we need to dive a little deeper into the construction of the ear. The ear is made up of 3 parts: the outer, middle, and inner ear. The outer ear houses the external auditory canal and is responsible for getting sound from outside to the inside of the ear. The middle ear houses the 3 bones that transmit those sound waves to your inner ear, the malleus, stapes, and incus. The inner ear is where the entire hearing process takes place through the cochlea. The cochlea has 1 row of inner hair and 3 rows of outer hair. The inner hair is responsible for roughly 95% of the sound processing process. In a person with auditory neuropathy, that inner hair is totally dead, meaning the brain doesn't get those sound waves as well as they should. This begs the question, what kind of things can cause this? Well, according to the National Institute of Deafness and Other Communicative Disorders, there aren't many reasons auditory neuropathy occurs, but the 2 biggest ones are genetics and damage to the auditory nerves. We attribute mine to the seizure I had damaging my auditory nerves when I was 2 years old. In addition, auditory neuropathy is an extremely rare disorder. In a clinical study, 1 in 433 children, or roughly 0.23%, showed signs of auditory neuropathy. This means that in America, around 750,000 people are living with this disorder every day. Because of this, I personally have never met another person with it, and it's likely that I never will. Now that we've talked a little bit more about what it is, let's talk some more about different treatment options that are available. The main goal for providing someone with auditory neuropathy treatment is to provide them with the ability to speak. Auditory neuropathy hinders a person's ability to perceive sound as well as a person's ability to communicate effectively. At this current point in time, the number 1 treatment for this disorder is a cochlear implant. A cochlear implant is an electronic device that consists of a sound processor, transmitter, and receiver that is surgically embedded into the person's head. In studies performed by Francesca Forley, they have shown to drastically improve auditory neuropathy patients and their speech perception. This is backed up by Jeffrey Simmons, a member of the Boys Town National Research Hospital, who states that cochlear implants fires up auditory nerves, allowing for better speech perception. Now, cochlear implants can be an extremely expensive way to treat this disorder. So there are other ways that are less costly and less effective, but are better at managing the effects of it. The biggest one is speech class. I went to speech class from the time I was 4 years old until the 4th grade. In my speech class, my biggest goal was to learn how to enunciate my R's and my L's and being able to differentiate between both of them. My speech impediment enabled me to not be able to naturally pronounce the sound of the R. So this was something I had to learn over years and years of speech class. With this being said, there are other ways to help manage the effects of auditory neuropathy, and this often comes in the form of a government-provided IEP and 504. The University of Washington defines an IEP as a plan to ensure a child with specialized instruction and services, and a 504, in the words of University of Washington, is an accommodation provided to ensure academic success and access to a learning environment. In my case, this looked like the teacher using a microphone to make them more audible and sitting me as close to them as possible. This condition cannot be cured, but there are ways to treat it and lessen the effects of auditory neuropathy. Now that we've talked a little bit more about the treatment options out there, let's talk some more about how it has affected me in my everyday life. Personally, in my daily life, I didn't see much of an impact. My school life was relatively normal with the exception of having to sit next to the teacher all the time and them needing to use a microphone. And my life at social gatherings was also relatively normal with the exception of being able to go to concerts. Now, I wasn't able to go to concerts due to the loud noise and my eardrum. Now, we do have ways to lessen the effects that noise has on your eardrum in the form of earplugs and noise-canceling headphones. With that being said, I did find the most difficulties I had in my daily life was in communicating with others. This is due in part to my speech impediment as well as my auditory processing capabilities in my cochlear. If we look at the International Journal of Community Health and Medical Research Center, we can see examples of ABR tests and OAE tests for patients with auditory neuropathy. An ABR, or an auditory brainstem response, tests the inner ear's ability to perceive sound and respond it with the brainstem. An OAE, or an autoacoustic emissions test, tests the cochlea's ability to perceive that sound and transmit it to the brainstem. In ABR, my level was extremely below the median line that you see here in this graph. In my OAE, it was extremely above it, meaning that to certain hertz, I'm completely deaf, and at certain decibels, I'm also completely deaf. As I mentioned, I saw the most difficulties in trying to communicate with someone when they were talking in a whispered or hushed manner due to me not being able to perceive the different sounds and words they were saying. And because of this, I would oftentimes have to ask them to repeat themselves. And after about 2 or 3 times, they became impatient and just ended up giving up on me. And this was extremely frustrating. But over time, I have been able to work on this and better my speech perception as well as my auditorial ability to kind of listen to what people are saying and also to kind of mediate the different tones that they talk in. In this speech, I talked about what auditory neuropathy is, how it has affected me, and also treatments that are available out there. In that moment, my parents didn't know how this would affect me, but 13 years later, I've always felt great moments of being alone, but this auditory neuropathy has opened up a world unknown.